When I first started as a freelance web designer, I was so hungry for expert advice from people who had already built the kind of business that I wanted to build. And I did find a lot of great advice, some of it super helpful, but some of it now I think was extremely misleading or just plain wrong. And in this video, I want to break down for you 5 pieces of super common design and freelancing advice that I wish I had been way more skeptical of. So things might get a little spicy, really hoping that numbers 3 and 5 don't get me canceled. So please don't hate me if you disagree. I'm just going to be sharing what has been true in my experience. Let's dive in. I'm going to start out with maybe the most repeated advice that I still hear all the time, which is charge what you're worth, or just simply raise your prices. I always found this to be so unhelpful and unspecific. And to tell someone that their pricing should be based on their worth as a human, to me is just so confusing and weird. Pricing is for sure a tricky thing to navigate early on. I'm gonna have a whole separate series of videos breaking this down, but the basic gist is that whether we like it or not as designers, we all have to charge based on some amount of research and based on an understanding of the impact that we can create for our clients. So that is not a sexy catchphrase, but it's way closer to the truth. So if you hear people saying, charge what you're worth, or just raise your prices, making it sound like it's a complete vibe decision, the problem is not you, you're not missing anything, it's just very incomplete advice. Number 2 thing I hear all the time that I think is bad advice is don't design a boring website. So early on, I was really scared of making a boring website because I saw so many videos and posts along the lines of why your websites are boring or how to not design a boring website. And I was like, damn, I guess that's the worst sin you can commit as a designer. But here's the thing. First of all, boring is really subjective. What one person calls boring, another person might think is like very minimal and elegant. But the main problem with this advice is that our job as designers is not to prove to other designers that we are not boring. Our job is basically to help our clients reach their goals and to create websites and brands that help them and their business. And almost no clients care if their website is groundbreaking design or if it's featured in a creative blog. They care about things like their site communicating well and being built right. So I would not worry about being boring, and instead I would just prioritize really great foundations like clean layouts and good typography, intuitive UX. And of course, not every website and brand that you create should look exactly the same, but I just wouldn't have, is it boring, be the first question you ask when you're evaluating your work. Number 3, we are turning the heat up a little bit. In this one, I want to talk about the common advice that all you need to do to have a successful design business is systemize, templatize, rinse and repeat for every project. And also that if you want to speed things up, you can just buy somebody else's business blueprint or systems and be good to go. So this is a marketing tactic used by not all, but some online gurus to get you to buy their shit. And this one is tricky because I think there's some nuggets of truth in a lot of this systems and templates messaging, but I think it's just very commonly framed in a super misleading way. And what I mean is that yes, systems and blueprints are very necessary for any designer, especially freelancers. I invested, I think, in some really good ones back when I was figuring out what worked best for me and my business, but you can't ultimately blueprint your way into strong design and client management instincts. This, unfortunately, don't hate me for saying this, it just takes practice. And a lot of seeing big projects through to success involves improvising and problem solving in response to unexpected issues that come up. So being able to do that without getting thrown off or losing control of projects, which has totally happened to me before, it just kind of takes experience. And the way that I would edit this common advice is that I would say, by all means, if you want to, invest in some tools from teachers who you trust, but manage your expectations of what you can get from those resources, and just be cautious of anyone who seems to be overselling. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And most importantly, do not feel like there's anything wrong with you if you still feel pretty wobbly when you're running projects for the first few times. Completely part of the process. Number 4 is the advice that when starting out as a designer, especially as a freelance designer, that you need to pick a niche right at the beginning. So for most people, I don't think it's reasonable to pick a niche at least within the first year, sometimes even a couple of years. I really think this time is best spent just saying yes to as many projects and opportunities as you can in order to figure out what you like, what you're the best at, and where the most demand is. So I guess you could get really lucky and land at the perfect intersection of those things right away, but I want to say for the majority of us, it takes a while. And the only thing you do need to do, or that you need to know from the start, is what problem you solve and who you solve it for, and communicate that in a way that makes potential clients say, yes, I need that. And then if you want, you can narrow things down slowly over time. Number 5, saving the spiciest for last. This one is an opinion that I have on something that's become really widely accepted as status quo. And that is that as designers, we have to be on Instagram and or TikTok. And also the idea that these are education platforms for designers. I personally have found these apps to offer way more distraction than value. And I know it's become basically cliche at this point to say it, but they are literally engineered for distraction and comparison. And I think they can make us feel like we're learning, but really we're just passively consuming and staying at like very surface level knowledge. I don't personally have a design Instagram account. I don't follow designers on those platforms. I will say, to be fair, I've discovered helpful teachers on Instagram, I think because they'll pop up on like a discovery feed, but instead of following them on Instagram, I just prefer to go where I can consume more long form content. So on YouTube or a podcast or Substack, whatever. So as always, do what works best for you. But if I'm wrong about this one, I don't want to be right. In conclusion, I want to give some bonus advice, which is that contrary to everything I just said, there aren't that many hard and fast rules in design and freelancing. There's really only gaining opinions about what works well for you and for your business. I know that I follow leaders who I really respect who totally contradict each other all the time, and neither person is really wrong. So now you have some of my hot takes. You're free to disagree with me. I actually think that's healthy, and I'll see you next time.